Most people believe financial freedom is a millionaire's game. But what if I told you you don't need $1 million to stop working forever? What if the real number, the number nobody talks about, is $300, not inherited money, not lottery money, money you can build, save, accumulate over a few focused years, and with the right strategy that 300K can pay you for the rest of your life. Today's message is not hype, it's not theory, it's math. The Mindset Saw proven wealth strategy, and if you stay until the end of this speech, I'll show you a simple blueprint that the wealthy quietly use to retire early. While most others spend their entire lives working for money they don't even keep. This is the message they wish you never discover. Let's begin. The real reason people never become free. People don't fail because they're lazy. They fail because they chase income instead of building cash flow. They work 40 years to earn money for 1 month and never stop to ask, how can I make money for 40 years from one smart decision? That's where 300K comes in too. Why 300K is a freedom? See, 300 Zenon is not just a number, it's a seed. If planted correctly, becomes a tree that grows fruit every month forever. For example, if 300 Karens Josephson annually, it produces the 30 Zen per year, 12 or 500 per month. But that's the floor. Imagine not the ceiling. Imagine reinvest. Imagine cash flow assets, and now it grows from 300K to 100K to 400K and 500K. But at 800K over 1 month of without adding a single new dollar from a paycheck, your money is now your employee. The wealth formula nobody teaches. Here's the simple formula that changes your life. Cash buy assets, assets K produce cash flow buys more assets. Most people do this instead. Third cash, singing a power cash flow will free you 300 in cash, that's low asset promise manager, paying an index, flow to property in the property manager, or own property manager, online digital business system, freedom. Why you don't need to be rich, you need to be positioned the wealthy and they put their money where it grows. Others put money where it disappears. You don't need 1 million. You need the right structure, the right asset, the right mindset, and the right strategy to let time work for you. 300K plus positioning of freedom. How 300K becomes a permanent income stream. Here's a simple illustration. Option A, work 40 years for money. Option B is let money work for you for 40 years. Let's take a realistic plan. Invest 300K in diversified assets at 8-12% average. Withdraw only the cash flow, not the principal. Reinvest a percentage for compounding. Add small income from passion projects if desired. This creates a lifetime cash machine that never dies. The psychological shift. The moment you stop seeing money as something to spend and start seeing it as a worker that produces more workers, you become unstoppable. Your job becomes optional. Your schedule becomes yours. Your life becomes yours. That is real wealth. The freedom blueprint. Build or accumulate your first or 300K. Move the money from cash to cash flow assets. Build a diversified portfolio that pays monthly or quarterly. Reinvest at least 30% of the returns. Let time compound what effort used to do. Protect your money with proper risk management. Live off the cash flow, not the principal. Continue learning wealth skills. Add small income streams that keep you growing. Day with more money than you started with and pass it on. That's how freedom works. The truth, money isn't hard to make. It's hard to keep. 300K is easy to lose if you don't understand money. With knowledge, structure, and discipline, it becomes a lifetime freedom fund. Your future does not have to be controlled by a boss, a paycheck, or an economy. It can be controlled by you. The question is no longer is 300K enough to never work again. The real question is, will you place your money where it becomes your freedom? Because if you do, the day will come when you wake up, no alarm clock, and realize you're free because your money is working harder than you ever did. Most people grow up believing that financial freedom is a dream reserved for the wealthy. The people with 7 figures in the bank, massive companies, or family legacies that stretch back generations. But the truth is far simpler and far more empowering. 300,000 when positioned correctly is enough to create a foundation that can free you from the need to work ever again. Not because the number itself is magical, but because of what it can become when combined with the right mindset, the right strategy, and the right understanding of how money actually functions. Most people spend their entire lives trading time for income, but income alone has never made anyone free. When you chase income, you remain dependent on your ability to show up, perform, and exchange effort for survival. But when you learn how to position money so that it becomes the worker, everything in your life changes. The wealthy have always known this. They don't look at a lump sum of money as something to spend. They look at it as a seed. And the way you treat a seed determines whether it dies in your hand or becomes a tree that feeds you for decades. When you look at 300K only as money, you underestimate it. But when you see it as a freedom engine, you immediately understand how powerful it is. That money, when placed into the right assets, can grow, multiply, and generate a steady flow of income that arrives whether you're awake or asleep, sick or healthy, working or resting. That flow, not the number, is what creates freedom. Because freedom isn't about how much you have. Freedom is about how much comes in without you having to show up for it. Here's the truth. Most people never learn money that works will always outperform a human who works. People get tired. Money doesn't. Money compounds. People have limits. Money has none. A dollar invested is an employee that never sleeps, never calls in sick, never stops producing unless you fire it by spending it on liabilities, take money away from you instead of adding money to you. 300K is not life-changing because of the amount. It's life-changing because it gives you the ability to plant enough financial seeds that your harvest never stops. With basic compound growth, even at modest rates, 300K can grow to 600K, 900K a whim and beyond over time. And while it grows, it pays you. It produces dividends, yields returns, rent royalties, or automated income streams that replace the need for a job. Imagine waking up and knowing that your money made more money while you slept than many people earn in a full day. That's not luck. That's positioning. The reason most people never experience this is because they were trained to seek security, not freedom. Security says, save money, hold it tight, don't risk anything. But security without strategy only leads to stagnation. Money sitting in a bank loses power every single day due to inflation. Money in motion, however, grows in power, or freedom requires motion. Freedom requires unjust circulate in the right direction toward assets that pay you, not toward expenses that drain you. When you treat 300K as capital instead of cash, doors open, opportunities appear. American systems begin to work for you instead of you constantly working for them. You shift from being a laborer to being a steward of your finances. And the moment that shift happens, you step into a world most people never reach, a world where money is no longer a source of stress, but a tool that builds the lifestyle you desire. This is why understanding this keynote is critical. Financial freedom is not about earning more. It's about positioning what you already have so it produces more. The person who earns 300K and spends it stays trapped. The person earns 300K and positions it intelligently steps into independence. You don't need millions to live a free life. You need enough capital to activate the system of compounding cash flow and long-term growth. And here's the most empowering part. At 300K doesn't have to come all at once. It can be built over time. It can be accumulated through discipline, saved through sacrifice, grown through smart investing, or earned through focused effort. What matters is not how fast you reach the number. What matters is what you do once you have it. Because when positioned properly, 300K becomes the turning point where you stop working for money and money starts working for you. The second principle is simple, but it is the dividing line between those who struggle financially their entire lives and those who step into a place of abundance. Most people work for money, but the wealthy position money so it works for them. It sounds like a slogan, but it is one of the most powerful truths in the entire financial world. And until you truly understand it, freedom will always feel distant. The moment you understand it deeply emotionally and strategically, everything begins to shift. Working for money is what we were trained to do from childhood. Go to school, get good grades, get a job, and spend your life trading hours for income. It's a system that keeps you dependent on your ability to perform. The moment you stop working, the money stops flowing. American, because most people are trapped inside this cycle. They think the only way to be free is to earn more income. But more income without a different strategy only creates a more expensive version of the same trap. The wealthy operate under a different law. They know that money is not something to chase. It is something to direct. They don't ask how much can I earn. They ask how can I get money to earn for me. That question changes your life. Because the moment you stop seeing money as something you receive and start seeing it as something that produces, you step into the world of cash flow, assets, and exponential growth, When you work for money, you are the engine. When money works for you, the system becomes the engine. Think about that. A person can only work so many hours, but money can work 24 hours a day, every day, forever. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't need a break. And it doesn't ask for a raise. It just needs to be placed in the right position. That is why the wealthy put so much effort into building systems instead of chasing salaries. They're building machines that print money long after the work has been done. The majority of people misunderstand wealth, believing it comes from high-income jobs or extraordinary talent. But the truth is, wealth comes from structure. A person with a modest income but the right financial structure will surpass someone who earns double or triple but spends everything they make. The right positioning turns small seeds into forests. The wrong positioning turns fortunes into dust. Money positioned correctly multiplies. It grows through interest, cash flow, appreciation, dividends, royalties, and automated systems that pay consistently. It becomes a living organism that feeds you instead of something you're constantly feeding. But money positioned incorrectly evaporates. It disappears through consumption, emotional spending, lifestyle inflation, debt, and liabilities that take money out of your pocket instead of putting money in. The key is to understand the difference between activity and productivity. Working harder is activity. Positioning money so it pays you is productivity. Most people spend their entire lives increasing activity. More hours, more stress, more struggle, hoping it will give them the life they want. But the people who understand wealth focus on increasing productivity, where every dollar works harder than they do. That's why the wealthy get richer even when they're not physically working. The concept is simple but transformative. Your money must be deployed, not stored. Money sitting still is dead. Money moving in the right places is alive. When you put money into assets that generate returns, you activate the law of multiplication. When you leave money in a savings account or waste it on unnecessary consumption, you activate the law of erosion. The difference between the two is the difference between freedom and frustration. The moment you start positioning your money to work for you, your life begins to expand. You start to feel a sense of control, clarity, and calm that most people never experience. You no longer panic when the economy shifts because you're not dependent on a single paycheck. You no longer fear losing a job because your financial life power is powered by a system, not your physical presence. That is the power of positioning. It frees your mind, your time, and your future. This is why the wealthy do not measure success by how much they earn. They measure success by how much they own that produces. Because ownership creates options. Ownership creates stability. Ownership creates legacy. When your money works for you, you unlock a new level of life. A level where your time belongs to you. Your choices expand. American, and your dreams stop waiting in line behind your job. And here's the greatest truth of all. You don't need millions to begin. You only need to make a decision. A decision to stop working only for money and start pursuing money so it works for you. Once you make that shift, the path to financial freedom becomes clear, and every step you take moves you closer to a life where work becomes optional, not mandatory. There is a simple formula that separates lifelong workers from lifelong winners. It's a formula that looks almost too basic, yet it is the backbone of every wealth story you've ever heard. It goes like this: cash, assets, cash flow, go to freedom. This is the formula nobody teaches in school, nobody explains in a job orientation, and nobody hands you in a financial brochure. And yet, it is the quiet system that the wealthy have used for generations while the rest of the world stays trapped in a cycle that leads nowhere. The difference is not intelligence, luck, or privilege. It's understanding how money moves. Most people use of a different formula without realizing it. Cash costs spend or regret. They work, they receive money, and immediately that money is consumed on bills, entertainment, lifestyle, or emotional purchases that give momentary pleasure, but no long-term benefit. The moment the money arrives, it disappears. American, and then they wonder why they can never seem to break free. No matter how hard they work or how much they earn, their money has no job, no path, no purpose. It comes to them and then leaves them, and they are left to start over again every month. But the freedom formula works differently. It begins with cash, any amount large or small. Instead of flowing toward consumption, the cash is directed toward assets. Assets are simply things that put money in your pocket. They don't drain you. They sustain you. They don't require your daily effort. They generate their own output. They don't cost you peace, they create it. Wealthy people know that money is useless if it doesn't buy assets that produce more money. When you convert cash into assets, you activate the next stage of the formula, cash flow. This is where the real transformation happens. Cash flow is income that arrives repeatedly without you trading your time for it. It is the money that continues whether you are busy or resting, working or traveling, healthy or recovering. Cash flow is the golden thread running through every wealthy person's life. It's not the size of their bank account that sets them free. It's the size of their cash flow. Most people don't realize that a person earning $4,000 in a month from cash flow is far freer than someone earning 0.10 or tens in a month from a job. One is dependent, the other is independent. One has to keep working, the other can choose whether or not to work. One has income that stops the moment they stop. The other has income that keeps moving even when they don't. That is the beauty of the formula. It creates options, and options create freedom. Cash flow is not magic, and it's simply the natural outcome of owning the right assets. Stocks pay dividends. Index funds grow and return yields. Rental properties pay rent. Digital assets pay royalties. Bonds pay interest. Systems pay repeatedly once built. Anything that sends money back to you, whether monthly, quarterly, or annually, becomes a part of your freedom engine. The more cash flow you build, the more secure your future becomes. And then comes the final part, freedom. Freedom is not the absence of work, it's the absence of forced work. American, it's having control over your time instead of trading time for survival. Freedom means waking up because you're rested, not because an alarm clock demands it. Freedom means making decisions based on purpose, not pressure. Freedom means living life on your terms instead of the terms someone else sets for you. When the formula is applied correctly, freedom is not something you hope for. It becomes something you plan for. It becomes predictable. It becomes systematic. It becomes the natural result of understanding how money travels through your life. The tragedy is that most people never learn this. They live inside a broken cycle that keeps them financially exhausted. They think working harder will fix it, when the real solution is working smarter, by directing money into a system that multiplies it. Because the truth is, money doesn't grow in savings. Money grows in motion. Money grows when it is assigned a job. Money grows when it is placed in a structure designed to expand. Once you understand this formula, you stop chasing quick wins and start building permanent systems. You stop being impressed by income and start being impressed by ownership. You stop asking how much did I make this month and start asking how much did my assets make this month. That mental shift alone can create an entire new life. This keynote is not just financial advice, it is a blueprint for freedom. A blueprint that has worked for centuries. A blueprint that will work for you once you follow its path. Take your cash, buy assets, let those assets produce cash flow, and allow that cash flow to deliver the freedom you've always wanted. Most people never achieve financial freedom, not because they lack income, talent, or ambition, because they misunderstand a critical principle. A cash flow is far more important than savings or net worth. Many people measure wealth by the size of their bank account, the value of their home, or the numbers on their paycheck. But true freedom doesn't come from numbers on paper. It comes from consistent, reliable income that continues to flow to you regardless of whether you work, rest, or travel. This is why focusing on cash flow, the money that comes in without being tied to your physical labor, is the single most powerful strategy for living life on your own terms. Consider this. A person can save $300,000 in a bank account and feel secure, but the moment inflation, taxes, or unexpected expenses arrive, that sense of security fades. That money isn't generating anything, it's static. It sits earning negligible interest, slowly losing purchasing power as the cost of living rises. Meanwhile, someone who invests $300,000 into cash flow generating assets can create a system that produces reliable income month after month. That income doesn't vanish if the market wobbles slightly or if an unexpected bill comes. Cash flow is flexible, resilient, and ultimately life-changing. Many people mistakenly believe that working harder and earning more will solve their financial challenges. They focus on increasing income instead of creating systems that generate money independent of effort. They may earn $10,000 per month, but if it all goes to expenses, debt, or poor investments, freedom remains out of reach. True financial freedom is not about how much you earn in a paycheck. It is about how much your assets earn for you without requiring your constant input. Cash flow transforms money from resource you chase into a tool that chases opportunities for you. The difference is subtle but profound. Imagine two people with the same 300 and one puts it in a checking account. The other invested into dividend-paying stocks, rental properties, automated digital businesses. The first person sees minimal growth and remains dependent on future paychecks to maintain their lifestyle. The second person begins receiving monthly cash inflows, often covering living expenses entirely. That is the power of cash flow. 300,000 transforms into a lifetime income stream. The other becomes nothing more than a buffer against emergencies. One gives freedom, the other gives comfort. And comfort is temporary, freedom is permanent. Understanding cash flow also shifts your mindset about risk and reward. Many shy away from investing because they fear loss, preferring the illusion of safety and idle money. But idle money is not safe. It erodes us quietly with inflation and missed opportunity. Money that works is not about reckless risk. It is about calculated positioning. When 300,000 is directed toward assets that pay reliably, your wealth grows and your income becomes predictable. That predictability allows you to plan your life, make decisions without fear, and build a future where work becomes optional rather than necessary. Cash flow also enables time leverage. When your money produces a consistent income stream, you no longer trade hours for dollars. You can focus your time on creative pursuits, passion projects, relationships, or expanding your asset base. You gain the rare commodity most people lack: choice. Choice to work because you want to, not because you have to. Choice to live life on your own schedule rather than a boss's tenement that demands of survival. Every asset that produces cash flow is like a worker for you, constantly building your freedom while you focus on what matters most. This principle explains why many seemingly errant people still struggle. They may have a high net worth, fancy cars, and a large home, yet they are enslaved to expenses, debts, and obligations. Their net worth is illiquid or trapped, providing no consistent cash flow to support life outside their work. Meanwhile, someone with far less on paper, but a disciplined focus on cash flow can achieve true independence. The lesson is clear. Wealth is not what you own. It is what you control that generates continuous self-sustaining income. The path to financial freedom is straightforward in concept, though it requires discipline and execution. And direct your capital toward assets that produce reliable cash flow. Reinvest part of it to grow the system and use the rest to fund your life. As the system compounds, your reliance on labor diminishes. A 300,000 applied correctly becomes a perpetual income engine capable of covering expenses, creating opportunities, and providing the freedom most people only dream about. Cash flow turns money into a servant rather than a taskmaster, giving you the ability to live, create, and choose with a sense of security and empowerment you ever experience. Focusing on cash flow changes not only your finances, but your entire life perspective. You stop measuring wealth by what you have and start measuring it by what produces for you. You stop working for survival and start working for purpose. And you step into a reality where freedom is not a distant dream, but a living, breathing outcome of smart financial decisions. One of the most powerful yet overlooked tools in building lasting financial freedom is compound interest. And it is the reason why 300 hours, and when used strategically, can behave like millions over time. Most people underestimate the exponential power of time and the effect it has when paired with disciplined investing. So they see 300,000 and think that's not enough to never work again. But they forget a simple truth. Money, when left to grow in the right assets, doesn't just increase, it accelerates. Compound interest is not a concept for textbooks or Wall Street articles. It is a real practical force that can transform a modest nest egg into a lifetime income engine. Compound interest works because money earns money, and then that earned money earns more money. Imagine you place 300,000 in an investment that returns 8% annually. After the first year, have a 24,000. That extra 24,000 doesn't just sit there. It now becomes part of the principal, generates own returns the following year. In just a few decades, what started as 300 and can grow to multiples of its original value, producing both wealth and financial independence. Most people miss this because they focus only on immediate gains and ignore the long-term effect of consistently reinvesting their returns. Time is the greatest ally in compounding. The earlier you start, the more powerful the effect. Even modest contributions over time, when combined with compound interest, can produce extraordinary results. That is why financial freedom is not always about earning more. It's about letting your money work intelligently and patiently. The person who understands compounding knows that consistent disciplined growth will always outperform short-term effort and sporadic windfalls. In fact, compounding is the hidden engine behind almost every story of wealth. It is what separates someone who struggles with money from someone who achieves financial independence decades ahead of schedule. Compound interest doesn't just apply to traditional investments like SLs, stocks, bonds, or mutual funds. It also works in other forms of financial growth, such as rental properties, royalties, or businesses that continue generating profit after initial effort. The key is to allow your capital to remain active, producing returns over time rather than being consumed immediately. Every dollar you redirect into a compounding asset is a step toward financial freedom. And every dollar you withdraw for non-essential spending slows the system down. The principle is simple. Let money grow. Let time do the heavy lifting. Many people fear investing because they associate risk with loss, but compounding mitigates that fear when approached intelligently. A carefully diversified portfolio, even with modest returns, compounds steadily and consistently, creating a reliable foundation for financial independence. The wealthy understand that small, consistent returns applied over long periods are far more powerful than attempting to hit a home run with risky ventures. Patience, discipline, consistency are the secret weapons that turn 300 into a self-sustaining system that supports freedom. Another overlooked element is the psychological power of compounding. When you see your money growing steadily month after month, year after year, it changes your mindset. You begin to think in terms of long-term vision rather than short-term survival. You start making decisions that protect growth rather than chasing immediate gratification. This shift in perspective is critical because financial freedom is as much a mental game as it is a numbers game. Compounding teaches patience, responsibility, and foresight, traits that the wealthy embody naturally. The beauty of compounding is that it works silently behind the scenes while you live your life. You don't have to work harder, chase more opportunities, or constantly monitor every dollar. You simply need to position your 300,000 correctly, equate to consistent growth. Allow time to multiply your efforts over 20, 30, or 40 years. This system produces results that would seem impossible to someone looking only at the initial sum. Thorin 100,000 transforms into a continuous, reliable source of income that can cover expenses, fund investments, and ultimately provide the freedom most people spend a lifetime chasing. The lesson is clear. Financial freedom does not require extraordinary earnings. It requires extraordinary application of ordinary resources. 300,000 is not a limitation as a starting point. When combined with the exponential power of compound interest, it can create a lifetime of security, independence, and choice. The sooner you recognize this, the sooner you can activate the system that lets your money do what it was always meant to do: work for you, grow for you, and free you from the endless cycle of working for money. Understanding how to create high cash flow, low-effort assets is the key that allows 300,000 to fund a lifetime of freedom. Most people assume financial independence requires extreme effort, a high-powered career, or a massive windfall. But the truth is far simpler. Freedom comes from owning things that produce reliable income with minimal day-to-day management. These are assets that don't require you to trade your time for dollars. They work continuously on your behalf, building wealth and delivering cash flow while you sleep, travel, or focus on other pursuits. The people who achieve early freedom understand this distinction. They know that effort alone will never sustain them. Systems do. High cash flow, low-effort assets exist in many forms, and they all share the same principle. They create recurring income without demanding constant attention. Stocks that pay dividends, index funds that provide quarterly yields, rental properties with professional management, digital businesses that run on autopilot, or bonds and treasuries with reliable payouts. Each of these allows your money to produce more money without tying you to a daily grind. The beauty is that you don't need to be a financial genius or a real estate mogul to access these opportunities. What you need is discipline, strategy, and the willingness to redirect your 300,000 toward vehicles that generate consistent cash flow. Most people fail to achieve freedom because they focus only on effort and ignore assets. They think, if I work harder, I will be free. But working harder only increases income temporarily, doesn't create sustainable independence. True wealth comes when your assets are doing the work for you. High cash flow, low effort assets allow you to leverage the system to take the limited resource of your time and amplify it exponentially through smart investment. One person can earn a living from their labor, but 300,000 portfolio properly positioned assets can earn more in a month than most people make in a year, all without requiring additional effort. The secret to building these assets is understanding two key principles. First, select assets that generate reliable income streams rather than speculative gains. And second, structure them so that maintenance and oversight are minimal. For instance, a rental property managed by a professional management company produces rental income without daily involvement. A dividend-paying index fund grows steadily without requiring you to follow market fluctuations minute by minute. Even a small online business with automated sales systems can generate recurring revenue while you focus on growth or new ventures. The common thread is that your money is working harder than you ever could on your own. The compounding effect of these assets cannot be overstated. Cash flow generated today can be reinvested in additional assets tomorrow, which in turn produces even more cash flow. Over time, the system becomes self-sustaining. What started as 300,000 can evolve into a network of income-generating assets that covers living expenses, supports personal growth, and even allows for strategic reinvestment to expand wealth further. This is how ordinary sums of money, when positioned correctly, produce extraordinary results over time. It is also important to understand the psychological freedom that comes with these types of assets. Knowing that income is flowing without constant effort reduces stress, increases choices, and opens up the ability to pursue personal passions. You no longer have to worry about paying bills, meeting deadlines, or staying tied to a job you no longer enjoy. Your life becomes defined by intention rather than obligation. Every asset that produces income reduces your dependence on a paycheck and increases your autonomy, which is the true meaning of financial freedom. High cash flow, low effort assets are not just a financial tool. They are a mindset shift. They require you to think strategically, to value long-term gains over immediate gratification, to understand that true independence is created by systems, not by sweat alone. Once you begin to focus on creating these assets with your 300,000, the trajectory of your life changes. You stop living paycheck to paycheck and start living in a system that pays you automatically. Stop worrying about financial survival and start planning for abundance, legacy, and choice. The path is clear. Identify cash flow, producing assets, invest your capital strategically, and allow them to work for you continuously. The effort you apply today builds streams of income that multiply over time. The discipline you exercise in structuring and selecting these assets pays dividends for decades. And the freedom you gain is not theoretical. It is tangible, immediate, and life-changing. Your 300,000 becomes the foundation of a life where work is optional. Your time is yours and your future is secured by assets that generate ongoing reliable income. High cash flow, low effort assets transform money into a servant rather than a taskmaster. They are the bridge between financial limitation and financial independence. And once you understand how to build and leverage them, a 300 is no longer just a number. It is a launch pad for a lifetime of freedom, choice, and opportunity. The seventh principle is one of the most important, yet most overlooked elements of lasting wealth. The mindset shift that turns average income into generational wealth. Most people approach money with a short-term perspective. They focus on immediate needs, temporary desires, or the next paycheck. They measure success by what they can buy today, rather than what they can build for tomorrow. But wealth is not created in a single moment. It is created in the mind first, and then manifested in disciplined action. The mindset of abundance, strategic thinking, and long-term vision is what transforms ordinary resources into extraordinary outcomes, including turning 300 or 1,000 into a lifetime of financial freedom. The problem with most people is that they view money as something to spend, something to chase, or something that defines their social status. They see income as the measure of success rather than assets and cash flow. This mindset leads to lifestyle inflation, poor financial decisions, and the endless cycle of working harder to maintain appearances instead of building a foundation for true independence. Without a shift in perspective, even large sums of money are wasted. 300,000 can disappear in a few years if the mind is not prepared to see it as a tool, a seed, and a mechanism for generating more wealth. The wealthy think different. They understand that money is not the goal. It is a tool to create freedom, security, and options. Every financial decision is filtered through the lens of long-term impact rather than immediate gratification. They ask, how does this action affect my ability to create passive income, build assets, or leave a legacy? This mindset allows them to convert ordinary earnings into extraordinary results. It turns temporary gains into sustainable growth. It allows money to compound, multiply, and generate streams of income that last a lifetime. Shifting your mindset starts with understanding the difference between consumption and investment. Consumption provides immediate pleasure, but no long-term value. Investment may require patience, discipline, and delayed gratification, but it produces returns that outlast a lifetime. People who understand this distinction do not measure their success by what they spend. They measure it by what their assets earn, by how their money works for them, and by how it positions them for freedom and security. 300,000 in the right place today can generate more financial independence than 100 million spent recklessly. Another critical component of this mindset is embracing pace and consistency. Most people want instant results. They want their wealth to appear overnight. But financial freedom is built over time through deliberate, consistent actions. It requires a vision that looks beyond today's desires and focuses on tomorrow's opportunities. By committing to long-term growth, avoiding impulsive spending, and leveraging cash flow assets, you allow the compounding power of money to work on your behalf. Patience transforms ordinary savings into extraordinary results. Equally important is the understanding that wealth is not just personal, it is generational. The mindset of building generational wealth means thinking beyond your lifetime. It means positioning your resources in ways that create long-term stability for your family and community. It means teaching financial literacy, passing on assets strategically, ensuring that the system you build continues to produce value for decades. When the mind embraces this perspective, 300,000 is no longer a number. It becomes a foundation for legacy, impact, and lasting freedom. Discipline and clarity are also central to this mindset shift. Most people get caught in the chaos of everyday life, making decisions based on emotion or peer pressure rather than strategy. Wealthy individuals cultivate a clear plan and adhere to it. They understand the rules of money, the importance of positioning, and the consequences of mismanagement. They make intentional choices about where every dollar goes and how it will work for them. 300,000, when applied with clarity and discipline, becomes a powerful engine for financial independence. The mindset shift also requires a focus on opportunities rather than obstacles. Challenges are inevitable, but the wealthy view them as chances to grow, adapt, and position money more effectively. They see problems as lessons and setbacks as temporary, not permanent. This perspective allows them to maintain momentum, make strategic adjustments, and continue building wealth even when others give up. The mental transformation from thinking like a worker to thinking like an owner is what multiplies income into lasting wealth. It is not the size of the paycheck that matters, but how the mind positions, grows, and protects what is earned. 300 is enough to never work again. Only if the mind understands its potential, treats it strategically, and remains disciplined over time. Without this mindset, even large sums of money are fleeting with it. Even modest resources can produce freedom, independence, and a lasting legacy. The 8th principle is one of the most important truths about financial freedom. True. Financial freedom is about cash flow, not net worth. Most people measure their wealth by the size of their bank account, the value of their home, or the balance on their investment statements. They believe that a high net worth automatically equals freedom, security, and independence, but the reality is far different. Net worth is a snapshot, a number on a page that may or may not translate into real usable money. Freedom, on the other hand, is a flow, a steady American predictable stream of income that supports your lifestyle, allows you to make choices, and gives you control over your time. The difference between net worth and cash flow is subtle, yet it defines the difference between financial struggle and financial independence. American, you can have a net worth of millions and still be trapped in a cycle of work because your money is tied up in assets that don't produce immediate returns and liabilities that drain resources. Conversely, someone with a modest net worth but strong cash flow can live life on their terms. American, they are not dependent on a paycheck or forced to trade hours for dollars. They are free because their money works for them consistently every month. Understanding this principle is critical because most people fall into the trap of equating visible wealth with real freedom. America, they see a large home, luxury and designer possessions and assume that the owner is financially secure. Yet appearances are deceiving. Wealth that is tied up in non-productive assets, liabilities, or expenses cannot pay the bills, cover emergencies, or provide security if income stops. True freedom comes from assets that generate recurring income, money that keeps flowing regardless of your physical effort or daily activity. That is cash flow, and it is the cornerstone of financial independence. The reason cash flow matters more than net worth is simple. Cash flow gives you options. With steady income coming in, you can choose whether or not to work. You can invest in additional opportunities, and you can plan your life without fear or constraint. Net worth without cash flow gives illusionary security. It can feel like freedom on paper. In reality, you remain dependent on your ability to access that wealth or to liquidate assets, often at inconvenient times or with loss of value. Cash flow, on the other hand, gives immediate actionable freedom. It funds your life, your choices, and your growth. Another critical element of this principle is that cash flow compounds over time. Every dollar of income generated by assets can be reinvested to produce more income. This is the difference between working for money and having money work for you. When you focus solely on net worth, you may accumulate a large sum, but if it sits idle, it doesn't increase your freedom. Cash flow not only provides current independence, but also fuels growth that multiplies over time, turning modest sums into enduring financial security. Understanding cash flow also shifts your mindset from short-term thinking to long-term planning. Instead of asking how much money do I have, you begin asking how much money is coming in consistently. You start evaluating assets not by their market price, but by their ability to produce steady income. You prioritize investments and opportunities that deliver returns over time rather than those that offer temporary gains or status symbols. This mindset is what separates people who struggle despite high net worth from those who achieve genuine freedom with far less visible wealth. The emphasis on cash flow over net worth is what allows 300,000 in to be enough to never work again. If that 300,000 is invested strategically into income, generating assets, stocks, rental properties, automated businesses, or other reliable streams, it can produce consistent monthly income that covers living expenses indefinitely. The total value of the assets may not reach millions immediately. The ongoing cash flow ensures that the individual is no longer dependent on traditional employment or uncertain sources of income. That is real independence. Focusing on cash flow teaches discipline, patience, and strategic thinking. You learn to prioritize income-producing assets, manage risk, and structure your finances for long-term sustainability rather than short-term gratification. Cash flow creates freedom that is tangible, measurable, and sustainable. It turns 300,000 from a static number into a dynamic system capable of generating lasting wealth, independence, and choice. Net worth may impress others, but cash flow empowers you. Cash flow is what allows you to live life on your terms, make decisions without fear, and step into a reality where work becomes optional, not mandatory. The ninth principle is a truth that most people completely overlook. How you structure your life determines whether your money grows even when you're asleep. Many individuals work tirelessly day in and day out, believing that effort alone will secure their future. They sacrifice time, energy, and sometimes health. Yet they remain dependent on their labor for income. This is the cycle that traps most people in a life of financial uncertainty. True freedom, however, is created when your life and your finances are structured in such a way that your money works for you, constantly independent of your daily effort. This is where 300 becomes powerful, not as a static sum, but as a foundation for systems that generate automatic, consistent returns. The concept of structuring your life for growth begins with the understanding that income must be uncoupled from effort. When your money is tied to your labor, your freedom is limited. If you stop working, income stops. But when your resources are positioned strategically in cash flow producing assets, automated systems or investments that generate consistent returns, your money begins working while you sleep, while you travel, while you focus on personal growth or passions. That is the essence of financial dependence, decoupling income from time. Most people fail to implement this principle because they focus solely on immediate needs or visible wealth. They spend their days working hard to earn more, often without a plan to deploy that money in ways that generate passive income. They buy things that depreciate, incur debts that drain resources, and build a lifestyle that depends entirely on continuous effort. This approach guarantees that even a substantial sum like 300 and can disappear if not positioned correctly. Without structure, money remains temporary and freedom remains out of reach. Structuring your life to allow money to grow begins with understanding the difference between assets and liabilities. Assets put money in your pocket. Liabilities take money out. Most people confuse the two and unintentionally spend on liabilities that drain resources while neglecting assets that generate income. To create a system where money works for you, you must redirect resources toward income, producing assets, real estate with rental income, dividend-paying investments, online or automated businesses, intellectual property, or other opportunities that generate recurring returns. These are the building blocks of a financial structure that operates independently of your daily effort. Automation is another critical aspect. You cannot rely on constant personal intervention if you want money to grow while you're asleep. Systems must be designed to function without your daily involvement. A rental property managed professionally, a portfolio of index funds, an online business with automated sales, American or recurring royalties from creative work all allow income to flow reliably without your constant oversight. When these systems are in place, your life and your money begin to operate in harmony, producing results regardless of whether you are actively working. Time leverage is a major benefit of this structure. Most people trade hours for dollars, limiting their earnings to the number of hours they can physically work. But when your money is structured correctly, each dollar becomes a worker capable of generating more dollars continuously over time. This creates exponential growth, cash flow that compounds and multiplies without additional input. The 300,000 you start with becomes not just a savings figure, but the foundation of a system that grows steadily, reliably, and predictably. The psychological impact of structuring your life this way cannot be overstated. Knowing that your money is actively working for you reduces stress, increases confidence, and empowers decision. You no longer live in fear of losing your income or being forced to work under conditions you dislike. Instead, you gain clarity, control, and freedom. And with these, the ability to focus on what truly matters in life, whether that's personal growth, family, or pursuing meaningful opportunities. The principle is simple but profound. Your life must be intentionally designed to allow your money to grow independent of effort. This is not a theoretical concept. It is a practical strategy that anyone can implement with discipline and focus. A 300,000, when structured correctly, becomes a living system that generates consistent income, compounds over time, and provides financial freedom. It is the difference between a life spent in endless work and a life where income flows automatically, enabling choice, security, and true independence. By embracing this principle, you transform 300,000 from a static number into a dynamic engine of freedom. You stop being a slave to your time and become the architect of your financial future. The moment you understand and implement this, you are no longer chasing wealth. Wealth is quietly working for you 24 hours a day. American, whether you are awake, asleep, or living life on your own terms. The 10th principle is a critical truth that most people completely overlook. Financial freedom is ultimately a choice, not a result of luck or extraordinary circumstances. Many individuals believe that wealth and independence are reserved for a select few people with connections, extraordinary talent, or large inheritances. They assume that unless they hit a jackpot, win the lottery, or inherit a fortune, they will remain trapped in the cycle of working for money. This mindset is not only limiting, it is false. The truth is that freedom is available to anyone who understands the rules of money, positions their resources strategically, and makes intentional decisions to build systems that generate ongoing income. 300,000 is enough to never work again, not because the number itself is magical, but because when you apply the right principles, it becomes the foundation of a lifetime of financial independence. The first step in making this choice is taking full responsibility for your financial life. Most people blame circumstances, the economy, or their upbringing for their financial situation, and they believe external factors control their wealth, when in reality, the only factor you can fully control is yourself, your decisions, your mindset, and your actions. By accepting full responsibility, you empower yourself. You recognize that every dollar you earn, every investment you make, And every system you create either moves you closer to freedom or keeps you trapped in dependence. Responsibility is liberating because it plays the power to change squarely in your own hands. Once responsibility is embraced, the next step is to make strategic choices with your capital. 300,000 can either be spent leaving you dependent on future earnings, or it can be positioned to generate recurring income. The wealthy consistently make choices that prioritize long-term results over short-term pleasure. They understand that financial freedom is not a result of how much they earn in a month, but how they allocate and grow what they already have. Every decision becomes intentional. Investments are selected for cash flow and growth. Expenses are managed carefully and assets are structured to produce income while minimizing personal effort. By choosing wisely, you turn a finite sum into a self-sustaining system that funds life indefinitely. Discipline and consistency are essential components of this choice. Financial freedom is rarely achieved through a single dramatic action. It is the result of daily consistent behavior applied over time. The decision to save rather than overspend, to invest rather than consume, and to focus on assets that produce cash flow rather than liabilities that drain resources compounds over months and years. 300,000 may seem like a finite amount, but when disciplined strategy is applied, it becomes an ever-growing engine of income. This is the power of intentional choice. Small decisions repeated consistently produce extraordinary results. Another key aspect of this principle is the mindset of abundance. Most people approach money from a scarcity perspective. There is never enough. Opportunities are limited and risk is to be avoided. Mindset of abundance flips this perspective. It recognizes that resources can be created. Income streams can multiply and opportunities exist for those who are willing to think strategically and act decisively. When you adopt this mindset, the 300,000 you have is not a limitation. It is a starting point, a seed that can grow into a perpetual system of financial freedom. Taking action is the final element of choice. Understanding principles, having the right mindset, and positioning money intelligently are all necessary, but they are meaningless without execution. Freedom requires action, and investing, structuring assets, creating cash flow systems. All of this must be done deliberately and consistently. Waiting for the perfect moment or for conditions to be ideal only prolongs dependence. The choice to act today is what transforms knowledge into results. And 300,000, when activated, becomes a powerful engine that supports independence for the rest of your life. Financial freedom is not about luck, extraordinary income, or waiting for external circumstances to align. It is about choosing to take control, positioning your resources strategically, thinking long-term, acting consistently, and maintaining the mindset of abundance. 300 is enough to never work again because it allows you to create systems, generate recurring income, and step into a life where you're no longer dependent on a paycheck or forced to trade your time for money. Choice is yours. Continue chasing short-term gains and remain trapped, or take deliberate action. Position your resources wisely and unlock the freedom that is waiting for you.